Alrighty. So I'm just gonna briefly go over kind of what we are going to be doing for the next 9 weeks. So first off, my name is Sarah Lanice. I am the Projects, Boards, and Commissions Coordinator for the City of Ann Arbor, located in the clerk's office. We do Community Academy every year at around this time, springtime, just so that way we can get the community involved with what we're doing, show you guys a little bit inside the lives of us, what we are all about, what each department does day to day, some of the big picture stuff that we're working on, just really give you a general overview of your local government. So during these sessions, you are able to ask questions to the presenters. Located at the bottom of your screens, you should see a Q&A box. You can go ahead and put your questions in there whenever, depending on who it is that is presenting. Some presenters like to answer questions while they're going, others like to wait until the very, very end. But we do try to get everybody's questions answered. If your question isn't answered, or if you come up with some more questions later on, everybody's contact information is online on the A2CA website in the 2023 resources page. So you'll be able to just click on them and then give them an email. So other than that, really, you guys are just like I said, use the Q&A box. You don't really need to raise your hand. You don't really need to do anything like that. We kind of don't do like a discussion like back and forth. It's all within the Q&A box. Other than that, I think I am ready to go to pass it off to our city administrator, Milton.
Thanks, Sarah. Good evening to all of you. Glad to be with you. First, thank you for signing up. When I saw the list, there were quite a few names on there, people from all around the community, and it's really great that there is so much interest in your local government. So I'm going to spend, I don't know how much time with you. I doubt that we'll be here until 8:30. I will take your questions in the manner that Sarah mentioned. And Sarah, if you notice me missing a question, you might help me out with bringing me back to it. I'd be glad to do that. I am 15 months in Ann Arbor. Came in October of 2021. And I've gone through one full winter and working on winter number 2. And right now it's really busy because we're in budget prep season. So we're gearing up for the budget. I'll talk a little bit more about process when we get to it. And then I want to make sure that the information that I share with you is relevant to you, is helpful to you. And I think by hearing from me first on the very first night, it should set the tone for what you hear in subsequent weeks from service area administrators or others that will be presenting to you. So with that, there is a presentation that I'll ask Sarah, can you bring it up? And so I'm going to walk through some slides for you. Okay, if we can go to the next slide, we'll start there. So I have been in the municipal management business for just shy of 40 years. The cities that you see on the screen is where I've worked. I started my career in Louisville, Kentucky, which is where I'm from. I worked for the city there for more than 20 years. And the last 4 years that I worked there, I was in the top administrative role. Then moved over to Lexington, Kentucky. I guess I should mention before I left Louisville, one of the significant projects that I worked on from my role as the chief administrative person was the merger of city and county government. So if you go to Louisville, Kentucky today, it's referred to as metro government. When I started there, it was the city of Louisville and Jefferson County government, and we merged those. Very difficult thing to do, but we got that done before I left. Then went to Lexington, Kentucky as the chief administrative officer, and Lexington was already a merged government. So while I worked there, I dealt with both urban issues and rural issues, which is a little bit misleading because if you know anything about Kentucky, you know anything about Lexington, when you say rural in Lexington, you are not talking about rustic. You are talking about the core city being surrounded by the multi-billion-dollar thoroughbred racing industry. And so the horse farms where Secretariat and other horses that you've heard about have lived surrounded the inner city. So my rural work in Lexington was dealing with horse farm owners and all the issues associated with that. And then after nearly 4 years in Lexington, I was the city manager in Cincinnati for 8 years. If you're familiar with Cincinnati, Ohio, if you were to go to Cincinnati and you go to the waterfront, which is referred to as the Banks, where it's apartments, hotel, corporate tower, a lot of social gathering places, restaurants, nightclubs, etc. When I went to Cincinnati in 2006, that was all just dirt. And so we built up the waterfront during my tenure there, in addition to a lot of other development projects, streetcar system, all of that. And then I left Cincinnati and went to the city of Phoenix. And I'll come back to the role of Phoenix in municipal government a little bit later. But in Phoenix, I was not in the top job. I was in the number 2 job. I was the chief operating officer or assistant city manager in Phoenix. And then retired from there, spent several months, not years, several months in retirement. And then I came to Ann Arbor when I said, so this is my 5th and most likely last stop working for local government. I'm enjoying here. As you can tell from the names on the screen, this is by far the smallest community I've ever worked in. And so I've had some growth to experience in adjusting to the difference in scale. But that's my background in terms of where I've worked and what I've done. Next slide, please. So I want to talk to you a little bit about governance. And in making my comments about governance, I'm going to leave out communities that are very small, villages and towns and townships. Not really talking about those. I'm talking about communities with some size. All of those municipalities have some document that governs or indicates the way the government is to be set up. It indicates the way the government is to run. It indicates who has what authority under what circumstances. In our city, it's a city charter that lays all of that out. In some cities, they have their own constitution, and the constitution determines the way the government functions. And a charter is something that's voted on by the residents of the city, which means that the only way you can make a charter change is to go back to the public and ask them to vote to amend it. It is not unusual over time for cities to amend their charter to make it become more contemporary, to make it be more updated. My experience is that cities tend to lag in the charter amendment side of the house, so to speak. And what that means is you typically will have some clauses in a charter or a constitution that are just virtually outdated. But until they are officially changed by the vote of the people, you have to still live by the outdated or antiquated language that some of them have. So charter is our governing document, and everything sort of flows from that. Next slide, please. So it's somewhat of an oversimplification, but for the most part, when you're talking about US cities, they will fall into one of two categories. Strong mayor, meaning that the mayor is the person running the city, or council manager. Council manager refers to a type of government where the city will hire a trained professional to come in and actually run the operations of local government. And council manager form of government is what Ann Arbor has. Next slide, please. So the way you can determine or judge the difference, if you have a strong mayor form of government, then the person that's in my role would be the chief administrative officer, meaning that I would work for the mayor. So a couple of my cities, Louisville and Lexington, they were strong mayor cities. So the mayor was ultimately in charge. I would have been the top administrative person. But in terms of directing ultimately day-to-day what happens in the government, the mayor would do that. In a council manager form of government, the person in my role and the role that I play here in Ann Arbor, I am both the chief executive officer and the chief administrative officer. So in our government, per the charter, city council only has 2 employees, the city administrator and the city attorney. So all of our legal staff works for Adeline Carr. She's our city attorney. She started after I did here. So she is my peer. All of the staff, so when you think of the departments or service areas that we have, the chiefs, the people that are over community services, that are over public services, communications, etc., all of those people work for me. So I'm responsible for bringing them on board, directing them day to day, and laying out the vision and direction that the staff is supposed to follow. So Adeline and I work hand in hand, her in the city attorney's office, me in the city administrator's office, in terms of helping to carry out the policies that the city council sets. So they are the policy setters or policy makers, and we are here to implement or execute the policy that they set. Next slide, please. So this is what our organization looks like. We are a little over 800 employees. There was a point in time when Ann Arbor had 1,000 employees. And then we had some economic issues. And so it was determined that the city simply couldn't sustain having 1,000 people. I don't ever really see a time when this city is going to be able to afford 1,000 people. even though 1,000 people would still be very busy. If we had 200 more, there'd be plenty for everyone to do. We have 7 labor groups. Our overall budget in round numbers is 600 million from different funds that goes into the budget. And so that's what we're working on now. I will be presenting my proposed budget to City Council on April the 17th. And they have a month to study it, if you will, ask questions about it. And then they are required by the charter to vote on the budget at the second council meeting in May. So for 2023, that means the budget will be voted on May 15th. And it's a 2-year budget. We plan for 2 years of expenditure, but we pass the budget 1 year at a time. We've got the mayor and 10 council members, 2 council members per ward. And the unusual thing about the council boundaries in Ann Arbor is when the city was created under the charter, each of the 5 wards touched downtown. That's unusual. Typically, the downtown area will fall into 1 ward, maybe 2, but certainly not all of the wards. And that was an intentional decision that was made. It was done so that all of the elected officials would be such that they had to be interested and pay attention to what goes on in downtown. In our community, we didn't want that to be just the responsibility of 1 or 2 people, but all 11. The mayor here does vote on city council. In some cities, the mayor does not vote. As an example, when I worked in Cincinnati, the mayor there did not vote, but he did have a veto power. The mayor in Ann Arbor has veto power, although vetoes are rarely used. It is there if the mayor believes that some official action that the council took is improper. Mayor Taylor can veto that, and that's defined in the city charter. The charter gives him the authority to do that. And typically, the mayor has to give a reason. It's not just veto and don't explain why, but veto and explain what you think is wrong or improper about the ordinance that council passed. At the bottom of the slide, you see COVID-19 impacted. We are such an organization. Unlike or not unlike cities around the country, before COVID, the way I'll explain it is, before COVID, in theory, all 800 plus people showed up at City Hall every day. Since COVID, that is not how we work. So during COVID, employees were directed to go home. This predates me. And we started providing service delivery in a remote fashion. Local governments weren't really used to that. When I came in October of 2021, our employees were still working remotely. And one of the early decisions that I had to make was, under what conditions would I require that people come back to City Hall, or would I require that they come back? What cities across the country have realized through COVID is that for a lot of jobs, we can actually be very efficient working remotely. And so what I decided to do was have us be a hybrid organization, and that's what we are today. So I've given the authority or flexibility to the various departments. You determine what the best configuration is. Is it showing up 3 days a week, working remotely 2 days a week? Some people are in City Hall every day. Some people are in only 1 day a week. Some people are not in at all unless there's a reason for them to be here. Obviously, you can't do that in every job. Some jobs require you to show up every day. And so people know that when they go into that particular discipline. What we have found when you look in the marketplace, because we have to go hire people to come and be a part of our organization, because of the impact of COVID, many people, not in the public safety area where you have to be here, but many other professionals have decided, if you don't offer flexible working schedule, I simply won't work for you. So if we were to say we're going to mandate that all of the civilian employees come back, we would lose people, and some of those jobs would be hard to fill because employees are telling employers, I'm not ever going to work a job where I have to be in a building every single day anymore. And so we've adapted to that. There are many pluses to it. It allows people to work in a comfortable environment. It allows them the flexibility to weave in family care issues in the midst of while they're doing their work. A lot of us work from laptops. A lot of communication happens with Teams or Zoom, cell phone conversations, etc. And so you can actually serve the public in this way, but there's some downsides to it. And there are some issues that we have here that we are confronted with and have to work through. So it's very difficult to cultivate full teamwork when you're working hybrid. There are people that are direct reports to me that I have only seen in person maybe 5 or 6 times in 15 months. So it makes it challenging to observe your employees. It makes it challenging to get to know them. One of the things we as leaders now have to do in environments is to pay attention to your employees, look out for signs that they may be having mental health issues or other issues. Well, it's very hard to do that when you're only looking at them on a screen, when you're only seeing them once every so many weeks. So that's one of, I think, the downsides or challenges of it, but it is what it is, and we're working through it. Next slide, please. When you say city administrator's office, you might think you're simply talking about me, the deputy city administrator, and the staff that works just right here around us. But if you look on an org chart or the way that our city is set up, all of these entities on the screen, from the clerk, DEI, finance, fleet, safety. We have a safety manager who's a civilian. Sustainability and innovations, which Missy Stoltz's area. All of those offices are considered the city administrator's office. So a number of them are direct reports to me or to my deputy. And we have to collaborate together in order to provide the leadership and direction for the city organization. So that's who we are. I would assume you would be hearing from some of the people on this list over the course of your 9 weeks. And hearing from them will help sort of fill out your understanding of city government. Next slide. We are truly in a situation where we must have, it's not optional, we must have strategic relationships. We are a town gown city, so the University of Michigan is a strategic relationship. We collaborate with them on a broad number of issues. There are times when we are perfectly aligned and perfectly in sync. Oh, I do need to tell you that in 3 minutes, 7 o'clock, the lights are going to go out in this building. There's nothing I can do to stop that. So when 7 o'clock comes and you see the background go dark, I'm going to excuse myself because I got to run down the hall to turn the lights back on. So if you'll just pause for a few, I'll run and do that, and then I'll come back and continue. We've got a brand new president at the University of Michigan. Coincidentally, he's someone who I've known for a number of years, because when I was the city manager in Cincinnati, Santa Ono was the president of the University of Cincinnati. So we have collaborated before, we've worked well together, and I look forward to working with him here. Ann Arbor Housing Commission deals with our affordable housing developments. They have their own board. And while I interact with their executive director, Jennifer Hall, on a regular basis, she does not work for me. She works for her board. AAA TA, the RIDE, Spark is the organization that handles economic development for the city. We do not have an internal economic development department as many cities do. This city made the decision to farm that function out several years ago. So we pay Spark to do certain things for us. So they deal with startups. They work on helping businesses to make relocation decisions to come to Ann Arbor. They work on business expansion. We have to have a relationship clearly with the public school system. In some cities, the school system comes under the jurisdiction of the city government. Here, that's not the case. And it just turned 7, so give me a minute, I'll be right back.
While Milton is getting that getting his lights back on, I just wanted to pop on and talk just really quickly about a little bit more about how these next 9 weeks are going to work. You have to come to at least 7 of the 12 sessions. And when you do that, you graduate at the end, which is really, really awesome. And if anybody is interested in going to the in-person tours, you have until Friday to sign up using all of those links that I sent everybody. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me or pop into City Hall. I'm on the 2nd floor literally almost every day. So.
Okay, I'm back. Thanks for your patience. So it is imperative that we have very strong working relationship with the school system, both in terms of the board, but for me, I have an ongoing rapport with the superintendent, with her office. There's just a myriad of issues where we have to collaborate, not the least of which, unfortunately, is school safety. Because of all that has gone on across the country, city government and the school system have to be in lockstep in understanding what school safety looks like. We have to have the ability to access a school building should there be an active situation there. You know what I'm talking about. And so it's just mandatory that we have an intimate working relationship, and we have that here. Washtenaw County, the county has a county administrator that's my counterpart. His name's Gregory Dill, and so he and I communicate back and forth. There are instances where our two governments collaborate on things. We've got a very positive working rapport. When I came to Ann Arbor, we did not have federal lobbyists. And one of the things that I started talking about early is if we want to be serious about trying to go after federal money, if we want to be in position for our city to be sort of in the conversation on certain things, whether it's policy related at the federal level or being in line for certain streams of revenue that can come directly to cities, you have to have a lobbyist speaking for you. It's not something you can do on your own. And so now we have federal lobbyists. We also have state lobbyists. One firm handles both things for us, and it allows us to be competitive or more, I guess, up to speed on what's going on in the halls of Congress and also in the General Assembly. The red-blue dynamic, what that refers to, up until the most recent election, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, you had a blue city in a red state. And for some people, if you were to go to Lansing and talk about what Ann Arbor needs or what Ann Arbor wants, that would be stopped right there. We do not have a long history of the assembly being favorable to what our needs are. Most recently, the red-blue dynamic changed. It's probably too early to tell how that might benefit us or to point to tangible things that the city has been able to get as a result of the change in the majorities in our state capital. A person in my role, I'm apolitical, so I can't be a part of any kind of partisan meetings. I'm not involved with the election of anyone. If you think about attorneys who are essentially governed by the American Bar Association, there is an international association that governs city managers. And I am a member of that organization and have been for years. And so we are strictly prohibited from writing campaign checks, endorsing candidates, participating in elections on behalf of a partisan person, making statements that would lean towards one person over another. We can't do any of that. I work with whoever the people send. And that's good for me, it's good for the government, and it's why some cities make a conscious choice to choose the council manager form of government, because they don't want the person that's in my role to be, dabbling in politics and worried about precinct captains. Next slide, please. So two kinds of issues I want to touch on, internal and external. Obviously, in a class like this, there's a lot more that I won't be able to say than what I will actually say to you, but I want to give you, some sense of the difference in the kinds of issues that we're actually dealing with day in, day out, week in, week out. Next slide, please. So on the internal side, in Ann Arbor, organizational stability is at the top of the list. This wouldn't be the case everywhere, but it is the case here. Organizational stability is one of the major reasons that I was asked to come here. And I didn't tell this at the outset, but when I retired from the city of Phoenix, I fully expected to go back to work for another city. I just needed a break from working because of the toll that leading Phoenix through COVID took on me. That Phoenix is the largest council manager form of government in the United States. And so when I worked there, I had 15,000 employees. 4,000 people just in the police department alone. It's big city all the way. And I led the COVID response for that city. And during my time doing that, we had double-digit deaths of city employees, and over 2,000 city employees test positive. And so I needed a break. I took it. Ann Arbor calls me. I wasn't looking at Ann Arbor. I had never been to the city before. And one of the issues that was prevalent here was this question about stability. This particular organization, we have had 4 city administrators in 5 years. And so if you think about wherever you work, if you work now or if you used to work, just think about what that would be like if the boss changed annually. So the employees are not comfortable in knowing what direction you're going in. Things are changing all the time. You're not sure what the vision is. You see 2 city administrators get fired. It plays out in a public way. There were leaders of the HR department that was fired, and everything I'm telling you was in the public realm, you know, newspapers, other print media, other media coverage. And so coming here, I came initially on a 13-month contract. And so January of 2023 would have been that 13th month. But after I was here for 3 months, one of the things that was clear to me, and I think clear to the council, if we were going to address organizational stability, it wouldn't do the organization any good if I up and just quit and went back to Arizona. So I asked the council, if you like the way I'm doing it, make me permanent and do it right now, because we're not going to be able to recruit people if as soon as they ask, well, who's my boss going to be? Well, I'm not sure because I don't know if I'm going to be here. So stability is something we're working through. We are a lean organization. As I indicated, 800 employees. The demand for services from our community is immense. We're not unlike other places in that we have more needs than money. But where it's concerning is we have some functions within the government where the bench is only 1 or 2 people. So you just think about that. Up until a handful of months ago, we had 1 individual that was responsible for payroll. So imagine if something happened to them, or if they just decided, I quit, then you're struggling. And so as we can, we need to strategically strengthen the bench a little bit. And so we're working on that. Staffing is something, you know, it's a competitive market now. So when I talk to you about having a hybrid organization, we put in the job descriptions where it's applicable that if you come to work here, you will have a hybrid schedule. That is a recruiting tool now to lure people to come to you, that they will have some flexibility. Part of this has to be real talk, and I think you deserve that. So real talk for this portion is we have struggled to have a government that is as diverse and inclusive as it should be. When I came here, there was, you know, news media coverage of the fact that I'm the first African-American administrator in 40+ years in this city. I happen to know the guy that was here 40-some years ago because he helped to mentor me earlier in my career. He's still living, Cy Murray. but I have firsthand experience where I can say there have been times when we have struggled to be able to attract diverse candidates to look at Ann Arbor. There's some reasons for that I'll tick off for you. As you know from watching the news, we're in a period in our history where it's really an employee's market. And by that, I mean, many employers across the country have staff shortages. And so when you have staff shortages, people that have the requisite skills for certain kind of jobs, they can be choosy about where they go. So there have been several instances, even since I've been here, where as we've tried to attract a more diverse pool of candidates, a number of those candidates, people of color, who said, I don't want to live in a city that's as cold as Ann Arbor, or I can make a lot more money working for another institution. We have lost people that work here because our pay is not competitive in certain areas. So that's a work in progress that we have to exert effort for. We're going to continue to do that and try to make the organization be more reflective of the community it's serving. And we do have a ways to go with that. The tax structure is an internal issue. The bulk of our money to provide the services that the public gets in Ann Arbor comes from property tax. And so we do that through the passage of millage. The people agree to tax themselves more for us to do certain things. The complicating factor is that the majority of people that live in Ann Arbor do not own property, they rent. And so you have people voting for tax increases who won't be touched by the vote that they just made. So we get revenue from property tax. We get a portion of state shared revenue that comes to us from Lansing. And then we get a portion of the marijuana excise tax. So first few years rather, that was in place, Ann Arbor was getting about $400,000 in marijuana money. Last year, that jumped up to 1.4 million. We were just informed within the last probably 72 hours that our allocation for this time will be just under 1.4 million. We had assumed it would go up, but it didn't. And so those are the major revenue streams that we have. We do go after grants. We're very aggressive about that. But that limited tax structure also keeps us from being able to hire more people. In many cities, they have a local sales tax option where the people agree to pass the sales tax. It provides revenue for the government to do more things. Here, there is a law that prohibits the city from doing that. And so we have to operate within the structure that we have. Next slide, please. On the external front, homelessness, go to any city, it's an issue. It's an issue here. It is related to the second item on the slide, affordable housing. Ann Arbor is not affordable. That is also a factor when it comes to recruiting. We can take no action at city government that's going to overnight or all of a sudden make Ann Arbor become affordable. And so we need to increase our affordable housing. We try to do that through the Ann Arbor Housing Commission that I talked about a little earlier. One of the challenges that we have is we're 28 square miles and the city does not own a lot of real estate. In other cities, city may own several hundred parcels of real estate. And so in those places, it's easier for a city to say, we're going to provide 50 parcels and you can put affordable housing on that. We don't have that ability here. So, something that we have to constantly work at. Public safety is an issue. We are working to create an unarmed response alternative here. It's something the community wants to see. We've allocated money for it. We're going through a process now to do that so that residents that need assistance, once it's up and running, you can certainly call 911 if you want to and ask for a police response. But if you're in a situation where you want something that's not a police response, this component would be available for you to request an unarmed response. And so it wouldn't be for every call. I mean, let's be real. If you got a bank robbery in progress, you're not asking for an unarmed response. But a lot of calls would benefit from a less intense kind of response. So we're going to do that. University relations is an ongoing issue. Again, we're a relatively small city. So university relations are paramount importance because we're a small city. So examples of what that means. So every time the University of Michigan plays a home football game, and we have somewhere around, I'll just use a round number, 120,000 people located in one place. Well, the university's police department isn't big enough to deal with that on its own. So we have to be involved, as does our fire department. A tangible example of things we have to do together. We are working aggressively on sustainability. City Council has established policies, our A20 plan. We're trying to encourage more people to solarize. We're trying to incentivize them for doing it. We're trying to get revenue streams to help do that. We are debating the electrification issue, electric versus gas, and the City Council hasn't landed yet, but it's something that's up for debate. We're trying to encourage more people to consider things like electric vehicles. We want to encourage more bicycling. We want it to be an urban walkable environment. Batteries instead of generators, and the list goes on and on. Economic growth is something that I think the attitude in the city is evolving. So for me, that's worked several places. Certainly at this stage of my career, I'm going to be a straight talker with folks. So I come to Ann Arbor and I sort of hear the tale of two camps. Some people seem to think growth is a bad word, and other people want to see more growth. It's just, how can it be done? I come with the lens I come with. I come with the experience I come with. And so I am openly saying Ann Arbor has no choice but to embrace growth. I'm not talking about 10,000 skyscrapers, but I am talking about greater density than we have now. One real example of why that is necessary: every time the University of Michigan expands in terms of its real estate portfolio, when the university buys a piece of property, it goes off the tax rolls. And so when the university bought the Pfizer plant, Pfizer was the leading revenue generator for local government. The government's never really recovered from that. So if we have situations where our tax base is slowly being altered, and then the tax structure is as limited as this one is, if you want to sustain your city and have it thrive, you have to embrace growth. Keeping it just like it is means going backwards. We need jobs at all levels, and we need to work on things from an equity standpoint. We have made decisions in the past that didn't factor equity into it, and we are trying to do better as it relates to that. And all of these issues that I just touched on is still happening in a post-COVID-19 world as well. Next slide, please. So a couple of major initiatives that we're doing. We did not have an infrastructure agenda previously. Now we do. And what that means is we have identified the major capital projects that have to get either rebuilt or created in Ann Arbor. As an example, we have a water treatment facility that needs to be replaced. It was built in the 1930s. Clearly, it's antiquated. But in order to build a new water treatment plant, we will need money from the Federal Infrastructure Fund. The price tag for changing out the water treatment plant would be north of $100 million. And so think back to what I said earlier, lobbying, being in position to get revenue streams. We have an infrastructure agenda that has the water treatment plant on it. The tree line trail, which has been talked about for some years, it would take about 10 years to build that all the way out if we were able to do it. Price tag north of $100 million. So that's on the infrastructure agenda. We have firehouses that need to be replaced. You know, think about the way work was done when firehouses were constructed. It did not contemplate the notion of women firefighters. So they weren't built with separate quarters. And so we still have some firehouses where you've got to kind of work around because you don't have a properly designed workspace for the men and women that work there. So we need new fire stations. The thing that I guess if there was one item that struck me immediately upon coming to Ann Arbor was the condition of the roads. And so when I started to ask, well, why are our streets and roads in the condition they're in? And then I heard the explanation about this climate, this environment with the constant freeze thaw during the winter causes the cracks, the potholes, they further split out. And so I get that from the sort of science explanation of it. What we were doing was taking part of the millage to pay for road work, and that's certainly appropriate. But the strategic question I asked was, is there some reason why we cannot take our millage and use it as debt service and do a bond that would allow us to fix more streets than we can, or fix streets faster than the way we were doing it? And lo and behold, we could. So council passed a road bond last year. The first year of implementation is this construction season coming up. So for the next 3 years, we will be able to do 3 times as many streets than we would have otherwise done. So it's not going to resolve our issue because there's, you know, I don't know if it's fair to say we let it get like it is, but because it's in the shape it's in, there is no quick fix. But at least the road bond implementation will allow us to make a dent in our problem and people will see some progress. Now, with progress comes pain. So it means that there's going to be a lot of construction during construction season on roads, and in a city this small, we're asking staff to be strategic in our communication so that we tell people in advance, hey, look, this corridor that you live on, starting 3 weeks from now, there's going to be a whole lot of activity out here. So it is going to disrupt your regular life. But, you know, when it's over, your street is finally getting some attention. So I think it's an admirable trade-off. We just need to communicate to businesses and residents about when it's coming their way, how long we'll be in their way, and then we'll move forward. Next slide, please. One of the things that is not automatically a part of my job, but something that I volunteered and have sort of jump-started, is to help the city get ready for its 200th birthday. 2024 is our bicentennial. I've convened a number of folks that were having separate conversations about what to do for the bicentennial. We've now formed a bicentennial coordinating committee. I'm one of the co-chairs for that. What you see on the screen is the logo that we have developed for the bicentennial. We've determined that rather than celebrating the bicentennial on a specific day, we're going to celebrate across the entire 12 months of 2024. And one of the things the coordinating committee is doing, we're developing an electronic Ann Arbor bicentennial calendar. So we're going to populate the calendar. It's going to be maintained by the Destination Ann Arbor organization. And we're encouraging groups around the city to let us know what you're planning to celebrate the bicentennial. If you're doing something that's cultural, if you're doing something that's educational, like what the library is planning, if you're planning some special event that'll only happen one time in life during 2024 and it's open to the public, we're asking you to let us know that. And so we want to put all of those events and activities on the bicentennial calendar. And then we want to publicize the calendar so people can pick out things they may want to do. We are encouraging the community to remember we want to be equitable and inclusive when we plan things. And so we want to have a variety of events and activities that celebrate the birthday, give people a reason to come out to learn about the city's history. But we don't want the entire focus to be simply looking back. The history is important. The history is something we need to learn from or learn about, but we also need to be looking forward. And looking forward means we should have, I don't know, I can't give you a number, but we should have some handful of projects that are legacy projects, projects that are going to transcend 2024, projects that are going to have an impact years into the future. One of the things we're looking at doing is creating Bicentennial Park, meaning we would take an existing park, it would be renamed to Bicentennial Park, and hopefully it would have certain kinds of amenities in it. That's not definite yet, it's under consideration. We've been having dialogue with the Black Elks Lodge about perhaps the Elks Lodge being a legacy project because it has a long-standing history in the city. We're looking at a wide variety of things. We've also been identifying famous people who come from here. So if you're into sports, yes, Tom Brady played here. Madonna went to school here, you know, and the list goes on and on. Is there an opportunity to involve some of them? Recently, we were approached by a former Olympian who lives here and who indicated that there are a number of people in Ann Arbor who at one point in time were Olympic athletes. And we're talking about maybe having some activity where we salute the Olympic athletes that call Ann Arbor home. So just a wide variety of things. If you're a part of a group, I encourage you in your group, think about somehow participating in the city's 200th birthday celebration. If you want to be a part of it, this logo will be available for any organization that wants to be part of the sort of umbrella of activities and events. And it'll be a full 12 months. It'll go by pretty fast. Some of us will be a little tired when it's over, but it's something that we should do. And we're trying to figure out the best way to do it. It'll only be as good as what the community chooses to make it. So some people will need to donate money. Some companies will need to sponsor things. And so the higher the sponsor level, the better the event will be. It's that simple. The school system is looking at what it might do for the bicentennial, and the University of Michigan is doing the same. So more to come on that, but I did want to mention it tonight since it is something that I am spending time on, and something I also wanted to put on your radar screen to know that it's coming in just 9 months. Next slide. If you were to just think about what is a city administrator's job in a nutshell, these items on the screen are a handful of what it is. You know, I'm supposed to take initiative. I can't sit around for everybody to tell me exactly what to do. I'm supposed to lead. I'm supposed to get out there, assess the city, see where opportunities are, take initiatives to address things, make decisions all day. You know, it's not a 9-to-5 job. It's not a job that you can do if your feelings easily get hurt by criticism. Leadership is required, understanding the legislative process, helping council to create the legislation that they want to debate and determine, having fiscal oversight. But it really boils down to problem solving. Again, from my apolitical seat, I think people, particularly at the local level, they want to see problems solved, irrespective of who's at City Hall. And they may have, you know, partisan philosophies, but, you know, I want the pothole fixed. I want the stoplight to work. I want the streets to look better. I want the parks. I want my community to be safe. Those are all issues that are not partisan. And that's what we're here to try to do. So next slide, please. If you want to engage or stay informed, here's a website, Twitter, Facebook, we're on LinkedIn. City council meetings are first and third Mondays, start at 7 p.m. We have a number of boards and commissions. If you think you have an interest in serving on one of those, there is an application process. Boards and commissions are populated by mayor and council voting on them. The city administrator has no authority over who sits on boards and commissions. I don't vote. I don't nominate people. So it's something you would need to do. And then you see the URL at the bottom for the bicentennial if you want to start following it. If not now, maybe a little later in the year. So I think this is the last slide before I go to see if you have any questions. And let me click here. What is your favorite city of the five? And note there is a correct answer. The city I'm currently working for. I love Ann Arbor. You know, as I said earlier, my home is Louisville. Even though my wife and I, we have a house in Phoenix, and when I retire, we'll be going back to Phoenix. Louisville's where my two granddaughters are. Our two grown children are in Kentucky, one in Louisville, one in another place. But I have to say, I fell in love with Ann Arbor and chose to come here. That's the key thing. I didn't have to come here. I chose to come here. The winter is a pain, I won't lie, but there's a lot of charm in our city. There's a lot to like, especially in the spring and fall. Glad I'm here. What are the primary staffing gaps? Which area of the city are understaffed? We need more people in the public service, public safety area, fire and police. We have a procurement office of essentially one person. So when you think about all the things that we have to buy, all the equipment, services, consultative services, and so we have to RFP a lot of things. So the procurement manager is part of the finance department. The finance department is lean. The finance department is where we had the one person that dealt with payroll. Now I think we have a whopping 2 people. We have needs in the sustainability area. We have needs in the community services area. So some people have complained that it takes too long to get a permit or development for this or for that, or the process takes too long. Well, when you only have a limited number of people, then that adds to the process taking long. Now we're looking at ways to improve that, but you pick an area of city government and I would submit to you, we need more folks. Some's more critical than others, but that's where we are. Is there a threshold at which council can override a veto? Yes. I believe it's a 2/3, so a supermajority vote. As I said, mayors don't veto very often. But if they did and the council wanted to override it, it's theoretically possible. You mentioned Ann Arbor income from taxes and 2 state sources. What about from fees for permits, which seem substantial at times? It seems like this is a variable source of income to provide appropriate funding, appropriate staffing for those areas of government. That is accurate, because in terms of adding people, we can add it if the revenue supports it. So for people in the building area inspections or in the plan review areas, we are able to add, and we have added some additional people, but we can't set the fees excessively high. The fee structure is supposed to recoup cost. And so it helps us. So, I'll give you an example of an area of struggle. We have a parks millage in Ann Arbor. The parks millage generates millions of dollars. However, we are a city that's only 28 square miles, but yet we have more than 100 parks. And so there are a number of parks that have deferred maintenance because we don't generate enough revenue to take care of them. And we don't generate enough revenue to have more staff that can address some of the things that the public's asking us to do. So that's part of the challenge. The tree line trail, what is it? So there is a tree line conservancy, a group of people who came forward with a vision of building a trail that would run through the core of the city. Some parts of the trail would be elevated. And so the trail would be, the best way I can describe it is a clearly defined, designated walkway through the city that is safe for families and children and all to go through. And so if you were to construct it the way it's been envisioned, there'd be more trees, elevated walkways, it'd have lights. Part of the trail would go past where the university is planning on building the 5,000 new units of housing on the central campus. But it's been a vision that's been talked about in Ann Arbor for years. It predates me, but it's something that we are working on. And there are segments of the infrastructure bill that Congress passed that are earmarked for things like recreational trails. And so we want to try to get a portion of the money to help with the planning of that. Is there any chance that the university would ever pay any sort of property tax? No, they're tax exempt. So they don't pay tax. They are not subject to city rules. We don't regulate them. And that's why I said every time they acquire a property, if it's on the tax rolls, once they buy it, it goes off the tax rolls. That's just the reality of our city. Key elements of sustainability plan that I mentioned. So the A20 plan, we're trying to become more of a carbon neutral city. We're trying to get to a certain standard by the year 2030. In order to do that, we have a series of activities and behaviors that we're promoting. We're trying to get people to walk more and drive less miles in their car. We're trying to get people to bike more. We're trying to get people to consider solar for their homes or businesses. We're trying to get people to consider purchasing electric vehicles versus gasoline vehicles. There's incentives that encourage people to do that. All of these things help to shrink the carbon footprint. We're trying to build construction in a manner that is sustainable. So green roofs, and we tinkered with parking requirements. What the government is debating right now is whether or not to make it mandatory that going forward, development can only be done with electricity and not gas. And that's a fierce debate. Some people want both, some don't. If you go to our website and pull up the A20 plan, you'll be able to see all of the elements that's there. We also have a plan where we're trying to reduce or make it more safe for pedestrians. So we're trying to reduce automobile crashes in the city. What the hybrid work structure, or with the hybrid work structure, how was city staff affected by recent severe weather? Did you have enough workspace for staff who lost power at home and needed to work on site? So in the recent situation, City Hall was a building that was missed. We didn't lose power at City Hall. There are a number of city employees that did lose power, including me. I lived in a hotel for a few days last week and ran some of our meetings from the hotel room because I lost power in the apartment where I lived. And so when you think about what my job is, I cannot be inaccessible. So I can't be in an apartment with no, the heat's what it is, but, in the dark, no electricity, in an environment where my phones could go down if I don't have a means to charge them. We had a number of people in situations like that. We did some things that we don't normally do. We did some things that I will be sharing with City Council as not sustainable. For example, we set up a couple of shelters and we staffed them with city employees. We had, we didn't make people do it, but we asked for volunteers. So we had some city employees who were taking shifts, helping to run the shelter when they had no power in the homes they live in. We had, over the weekend, I opened up City Hall for people that might have needed to come and take a shower to be able to shower here. It's not the norm, not ideal. And then when you look at it from the broader perspective, whether you believe in climate change or whether you don't, the weather patterns that we're seeing are very out of the norm. All the blizzards in California, in Arizona, the intense heat, the multiple systems coming back to back to back. So as a community, we have got to get our heads around, we have not seen the last power outage incident. We probably haven't seen the last ice storm. We want to get all the way out of this incident, and then internally we need to have a conversation and then talk with the council and talk with the community. If we accept that we're going to have these incidents come periodically, we got to make sure we do everything in advance to get as prepared as we can, even though we're still going to be inconvenienced. So things like, having a house that has no flashlights in it, having a house that you don't have a sufficient number of blankets, whether you feel comfortable not getting a generator or a battery backup so that you have alternative power, things that people can do for themselves to get ready. Do you have bottled water? Things that we've all got to do a better job of, simply because the situation is going to keep coming back. This was promoted, or I guess identified, as the 50-year ice storm. I don't know that we can say that's true. When we say it's a 50-year ice storm, it makes people think, oh, well, I won't have to worry about it again, because by the time it rolls back around, I'll either be in a different stage in life, or for some of us, we won't be here. We'll see. We had plenty of workspace in the building. We did our emergency operations center meetings virtually on Zoom. And, we made it work. When you get in a situation like that, you have to make it work. And we had people that donated food to the shelters. A number of companies brought food. So we made it work. But here's my point. The message that I've got to carry to City Council: we can't be in a situation where we're going to assume that the norm when an emergency happens is city employees are expected to staff overnight shelters. They're not trained for that. We don't have a social services department. You can't make people, leave their homes and take on those kinds of roles. Has Ann Arbor considered an income tax? We are, the tax structure we have now is what we're legally allowed to do. The legislature has restricted cities' ability to do certain things like sales tax, income tax. And so that is why, in part, that you get a portion of the shared state revenue. Is it sufficient for what our needs are? No. And is the rules going to be loosened on what cities can do? That remains to be seen. And even though there's one party in power now, there's a limit to what any one party can do at any point in time. Because you still have to face the wrath of the voters. So it looks like I have rolled through all of your questions. I can't see you, so I hope that you got something out of what I had to say. And I guess I'll leave you with this. Make no mistake, I am happy to be here. I'm happy to be serving in the community. I see a lot of potential in the city, and I hope we have the guts to work for it. I have to be free to call it like I see it. So I'm always going to be honest with the community and honest with council. I do not believe leadership means, I need to say yes to everybody or be afraid to explain why certain things can't happen. So my integrity is something I'm not willing to compromise, certainly not at the end of my career. I've never been in any kind of ethical integrity kind of situation, and I'm not going to start now. So thanks for participating. If you have any questions after the fact, you can send me an email. I'll be happy to respond to you, or you can give it to Sarah and I'll circle back to you. I hope you get something out of the other 8 weeks of class. Was supposed to go to 8:30 at 7:55. I can tell you're crushed that you might get out early on the first night. Man, college is great. Why can't all the classes be like this? Sarah, have I covered it?
Yep, that'll do it for tonight. Thank you so much, Milton, for coming and talking to us today.
Okay, you all be safe. Good luck with the rest of the class, and I will say good night to you.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, so much. We will see everybody next week. Transportation will be doing theirs next week. Like I said before, we do have a few spots still open for the in-person tours. If you are interested, please sign up before the end of this week. And if you guys have any questions, please do reach out. This video recording as well as the PowerPoint will be available on the A2CA website under the 2023 resources page at the end of this week. And yeah, I hope that y'all have a great night and we'll see you soon.